first, when I received my copies in the post this last week, I was just blown away with the comments that are on the back. Some of the blurb that we got for it. It's an electric combination of the visceral and compassionate, taut, vivid prose is in there, not a word wasted. Every image well defined, unique and memorable. It really is as well. It's a grand collection. I'm really proud to be part of it.
So my story is called, I just can't remember, May We Know, let's go with brain. My story is called May We Know Them. And just to explain, it has sections, and any section that is titled Moses is happening in the present for the characters. And then there's sections labeled Helen and Juliana, and they're happening in the past and tell us what led to this moment. So I'm going to read one of the present sections this evening. It's quite near the beginning. So this bit is Moses. The house is mercifully cool and dark until the women begin to move. Helen lights the lamps, then walks around with a spool of tape around her arm like a bracelet. She twirls it, and every now and then pulls a strip off with her teeth. She peels off old, curled pieces of tape from the little holes around the room and replaces them with fresh, checking for new holes or frass. She bundles the old pieces into her pocket where they form a sticky mass. She's always like this when they get home, unpacking and sorting immediately, while Juliana usually lounges on one of the dusty chairs with a mug of hot water, complaining about the blisters on her ankles where her boots have chafed, or slithers of cuts on her fingertips where the baiting hooks have nipped at her. But tonight they both move. Clothes are either put away or dumped in the wash tub after a deciding sniff. There are only 3 rooms in the house, with a toilet in a slatted outbuilding in the backyard, so there isn't much to do, but still. Windows are opened, the dishes that had been left out to drain a few nights ago are put away. The rucksacks are pinned to air on the line between the porch and the fence. Eventually, there is nothing to do but look at the thing in the basket. Juliana crouches down to it, her face close. She whispers, quiet as a footstep in the sand. Moses, we're home now. You're home.
Story in this collection is called Pass Through the Waters. It's a quote from the Bible, and I was trying to find a few quotes because my story is set in Regency times, and obviously religion was important in that time, and the character kind of goes through a lot of the difficulties of being one person in society versus her own self in her private life. And so I did write in different sections where you have diary entries from the main character, as well as third person excerpts as well. And she also writes letters to her sister. And I hope you can kind of see the differences in all those, about the different types of herself that she is. The main thing the story kind of focuses on there is that folklore element. So obviously we're myths and mothers in this collection, and the myth I kind of was focused on was that of Selkie, which is, well, I know it from Scottish and Irish folklore, but there are different Selkie-like creatures in other communities. But basically they are women who are women when they are on land and seals in the ocean, and they're tied to the ocean by their seal skin. So as long as they have access to that, they can return to the ocean. And the story I know is based on a fisherman falling in love with a Selkie and stealing her seal skin, therefore making it impossible for her to return home to the ocean. And I wanted to kind of twist that tale and see, you know, what would happen, what would there be to make her choose to stay on land. And that's kind of where I got the ideas for this story from. I do want to give a shout out as well to Orton. They are a great writers group here in Manchester, but they do have online sessions as well. So they've always been a big support, and they were there last week at the Blackwell's launch. I was fortunate enough to be one of the only people without COVID. So I was able to attend last week, and it was a great turnout, and it was a really fun event. But I'm really glad we get to do the online as well, because I've got family members who are attending now who are from all around the country. So it's great to be able to see them and this as well. And with that, after that, I will read from the lovely collection. Shout out for this gorgeous cover as well, because I know Kayla designed it, who works for Fly on the Wall, and I just think she's done an absolutely amazing job, and it's beautiful. It's great that obviously the stories have amazing words, and I just find it fascinating that we all randomly have, submitted these stories that all came together so well, which is kind of strange. So Fly on the Wall, it made this as part of their open submission season. There wasn't a kind of call out for specific stories. They just got these different stories from the 5 of us and saw these themes in all of them. And I just think that's kind of a bit magical. But yeah, and then Kayla designed this lovely cover, which we know we're not supposed to judge books by their covers, but if they do have a beautiful cover, it definitely helps. So anyway, I will just read from the beginning of my story. I think the beginning's the best place to kind of take it from. Called Pass Through the Waters. My dearest Elizabeth, I must once again profess my gratitude to you in procuring such an ideal situation as Reed Cottage for Mary and myself. Mr. Thompson could not have found a more pleasing place for us on all his properties. It is exactly right for us and should only need the assistance of a girl to come each day, which, as you know, is all my current income will allow. I find I am blessed with such kind relations as Mr. Thompson and yourself. Not only took us in after my poor William passed away, but now have found somewhere my child and I can grow to be happy, despite our losses. I know you will not have seen Reed Cottage yourself, having not travelled to this area of the country, so I've included a small sketch of the lovely house and garden. Note the trailing honeysuckle, which you will remember as a favourite of mine. I will, of course, write to you soon and tell you how the neighbourhood is. I simply had to write to you now to inform you that we are arrived safely. Yours, in eternal gratitude, Cass. Reed Cottage did not have honeysuckle growing in the garden. The house faced out on too wild a prospect for such delicate plants, but she wanted her sister to think her happy. Elizabeth had pleaded with Cass to stay with her and her husband George and their boy. Cass couldn't bear to, though. Just 4 years as mistress of her own home had given her a taste of independence she could not give up, not along with losing poor William. Poor William. A naval officer with a ready smile and good prospects for his future. A hard worker, his optimism had balanced Cass's propensity to worry and melancholy. And then the sea had taken him from her and their daughter, the waves laughing at all his plans. You are lucky, her brother-in-law had said, unfolding his newspaper, that he put money aside and invested. I'll happily pay my man to manage it for you, and you should be comfortable. You will even have enough money for a small dowry for Mary. Not many widows have such luck. Of course, if you were to marry again, you would find life a lot easier. It's too soon to talk of that, Elizabeth said.
It's about myths and mothers. And I was really pleased to have this story accepted for the anthology. It's actually the first in a short collection about the summer the narrator had away from home. So this is the first part of the first story that I'm going to read now. Before packing, we had warning sufficient just to eat a light breakfast. My younger brother, Jake, and I were lucky enough boys, so mother had it, to be visiting our Granny Wallop. A holiday, she said. I had concerns from the off. She never before having used Granny Wallop's name in any but a cautionary context. Typically, here thou'd not be so swamish with our Granny Wallop rearing thee. Nevertheless, my hope was that if not the same taxi we caught from the train station in Settle, then an ambulance would be returning mother. For if she wasn't herself planning on heading all the way back home to Leeds, At least there in Settle, she might be delivered of her third child in hospital. This was a hope, washed clean away with her breaking waters. Forget a place to give birth. I couldn't have imagined a dwelling more remote than Granny Wallop's. But wedged as it was into a hillside otherwise adorned with dry stone walls, mud and sheep only, better tumble down Wallop's roost than the back seat of a taxi. Our cabby certainly thought so. Slewing around those hairpin bends, it's a wonder we didn't lose the baby down a gorge. Although any relief either our cabby or I felt upon arrival, Granny Wallop soon dispelled. For her brittle sheaf of white hair that had slipped its tie and eyes wild like flaming copper, she might have just dismounted that besom she came out wielding. If I hadn't been petrified at the sight of her, I'd have jumped back in the car. Cabby was off before Mother could pay him. She'd given us boys more notice of our holiday than she had her own estranged mother, and it seemed that only her being with child kept Granny Wallop from breaking that besom across her backside. She'd not be pregnant for much longer. Notwithstanding, with the same sublime indifference that Mother bore all adverse consequences of her own ill planning, she waddled wetly across the cobbles into Wallop's roost. From across the threshold, "Thee mind Jake," she called over her shoulder, as if Jake needed my minding. True, I was the elder by 2 years, but commensurable with my deepening perennial state of anxiety was envy of Jake's general obliviousness.
So now we thought we'd try something a little bit different with the end of our launch. Sometimes we'll do like a Q&A. We thought it would be lovely if we had a little guest space. So we've actually got a guest performer this evening. I don't actually know if she'll be doing short stories or poetry or something cross genre. So that's going to be a surprise for us this evening. But we have Fanny F. Gray performing for us. And thank you very much for performing for us. It's going to be mythology or motherhood themed, I believe. So looking forward to what you've got.
Thank you. Yes, this is a piece that is fresh off the rejection pile, I have to say. Thank you, Gaynor. JMWW just rejected it, but it's pretty dear to my heart, so I hope that you'll enjoy it. It's entitled Naiad. Inside me, there is a river. Perhaps my mother swallowed too much sadness. Perhaps there were two of us swimming within her, and after one drowned, the water swelled, slithering into me. Who knows how these things happen? Recently, a coughing fit dredged up silt and muck, bones and teeth. There is always so much more in a river than what you think. I have tried to mitigate it in some way, swallow enough bread or sand, but the water only rises. I no longer sleep on my back. I would drown. August is the worst month. Around me, the air becomes waterlogged. I do not perspire, but even the slightest touch leaves a dimple of wetness, like when you push upon a sponge forgotten in the sink. I cannot live within plaster walls. Too soon, the black crawls up, etching and fanning like coral, like breccia. Wood is not much better, too porous, brick, mosses, and ferns. Winter can be cruel. The occasional cold snap will wreak havoc throughout me. My veins are icy splinters, and moving takes Herculean effort. It is too tiring being altered by the moon and the seasons. Once I thought I could leave this place and stifle the source. I nearly died in a drier climate, my skin paper to the touch. A short while back, I met a man who told me he could see all that was damned within me. I took his hands and pressed them to my eyes. So much spilled out from me then he fled, terrified that I would inundate him. I longed to complete, to belong, the way the Mississippi barrels with all her strength to meet the Gulf. She is being called home. I stand now by the retention pond, my whole being seeping, yearning, when a blush blossom catches my eye. I summon up my height and bend from my waist, wavering like a heron, poised to strike. I take the lotus whole. I feel the green of it as I take it down into my watery depth, the vegetal tang as its fibrous parts soak within me. As I hover over the water, baited like a fish upon the lotus, this is when I hear the song. Tadpoles and newts thrumming, newly sprouted legs whisking through the water, fish gliding, silver scales sluicing ripples, all the aquatic plants dancing upon the surface, while below their tentacled roots ebb and flow. All these in chorus, beckoning me, let down your load. At last, as I plunge into my new home, everything is so much clearer beneath the surface.